Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. If you've heard of Naptown Funk, We Give a Ship, Helm Yeah, or any other incredible spirit spots at the Naval Academy, then you need to check out this episode. Today, I'm joined by Rylan Tuohy, who I'll just dub as the king of spirit spots. And in this episode, we dive into what even brought him to the Naval Academy, his knowledge of spirit spots from beforehand, and what inspired him to really want to get into video making, and specifically spirit spots at the Academy. We follow his journey and get to hear all of the behind the scenes of all of the making of the incredible spirit spots that you know and love. So if you're interested in hearing about that, please tune into this episode. Please share it with someone who you think may love this episode as well. And as always, please feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy this episode. It's extremely fun, just gives an insight into something that provides a ton of joy to the Naval Academy community. So really appreciate it. Let me know if you ever need anything from me or Academy Insider. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy. The Academy Insider podcast is sponsored by the Vermeer Group, a residential real estate company that serves the United States Naval Academy community and other select clientele in both California and Texas. If I can ever answer a real estate related question for you or connect you with a trusted Academy affiliated agent in the market which you're in, please reach out to me directly at grant@thevermeergroup.com. You can also reach out to me on my LinkedIn page, Grant Vermeer, and I'd be happy to respond to you there. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the episode. All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. Rylan, my guy, thank you so much for taking the time. Oh, boy, off to a good start here. Taking the time to join us today. If you don't mind, just giving people a little bit of a background about you, where you're from, how you ended up at the Naval Academy, and what you're doing now.
Yeah. Hey, Grant. Thanks for having me. Grew up in rural Kentucky, went to the Naval Academy, class of 16. When I was there, I sailed on the offshore team, was in the Glee Club, and in my spare time, I created these little things called spirit spots. Had no idea they would have such draw and audience, which is amazing. I commissioned as a civil engineer corps officer and served 5.5 years, did 2 deployments, got out 2.5 years ago, and now I work as a commercial writer and director.
I love it. And you use the term spirit spot, and that's what this episode is going to be all about today. For someone who's completely unaware of like the Naval Academy or what a spirit spot is, do you mind giving them a quick rundown and a brief explanation of a spirit spot?
Spirit spot is a short comedic video to rally support for Navy.
Yeah.
Was that short enough?
That was perfect. And that's exactly what it is. And again, I think what's really interesting about spirit spots is you'll see them in so many different formats, right? Like a lot of them, again, the big ones you see are about the Army Navy game or about the Air Force Navy game or whatever the case is. But they're random spirit spots. And you've made some in the past that are just about beating the dark ages or just a general video, some kind of thing to kind of raise morale regarding the Naval Academy experience. And so I want to turn it to you of how much did you know about quote unquote spirit spots before you started making your first one? And was there anyone who kind of instigated or inspired you to be like, oh, I think these would be cool and I would really enjoy getting to make some, videos supporting the Academy?
Oh, for sure. I think I settled on the idea of wanting to go to the Academy. It was later in my time as a senior in high school. It was like August, September. And I was like, yeah, I think I want to go to the Naval Academy. At the same time, I was considering film school. Mm-hmm. So once I settled on the Naval Academy, spirit spots were already on my radar. Backshaft Productions was one of the ones that I would watch over and over and over again. And I do remember actually, like before going to the Academy, thinking about if I were to go and like what would I do and what would I want to make. And for me, though, my brother is an 2008 grad, so spirit spots came on my radar much earlier than that time frame. And at that point, though, I was so much younger. And my top 2 favorites are the Matrix one, because I just think it's so creative and goofy and wild, which is what a spirit spot should be. And then the Call on Me one, it was just hilarious. And so I remember seeing them, and I had no intention ever to like, I just wanted to make something. I knew I had this hobby, this talent. And so I just wanted to like add mine to the pile, so to speak.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Which leads to your first one, which is the game for the real players. When you're making that, first of all, are you a plebe as you're making this, or did you wait until you were like a youngster second class to start making videos? And then the second thing was, how was it received? because I think some of the funny things that we'll discuss, and it's probably one of my favorite parts about one of your spirit spots, is kind of roasting people who make horrible spirit spots, like potentially one of the ones from West Point where you put the clip of the video. But like, how was your first one received? Were you nervous about, putting it out? Were you feeling confident? And kind of what was the process of actually creating your first spirit spot?
Music video was the easiest way to go
Sure.
because you don't have to have the equipment to record on-screen dialogue.
Sure.
I was in the Glee Club and became friends with midshipman at the time, who was actually a second class. I was a plebe. His name was Nate Brown. By the way, Nate Brown is taking over the world right now. Him and his brother have like billions of streams on Spotify, and he was on America's Got Talent. And he's the alumni that you haven't heard about that you should, because he's like just tearing up the world in the music industry. But I was like, hey, I have this idea. And I'm pretty sure I wrote the lyrics with Khalifa Israel, who's also the guy who raps in the project. And they were both second classes. I was a plebe. I was in second reg. And I remember they were like, hey, we need to film this. Come over to my company in first reg. Yeah. So I was like a slimy plebe. I put on some spirit gear. I went over and everybody was like calling me sir, all the plebes. Yeah. And I was like, kind of squaring my corners, kind of like scooting around because I just needed to make the video. Sure. And nobody knew who I was. I was just like second reg and first reg, like you just like another face, right? So filmed it, edited it, and I remember doing that editing in Nimitz in that media center, and getting the help from the civilians there. And when I released it, I think in the first little bit it was like 10, 20, 30,000 views. And I was just really proud of it. It was the first project I'd ever released. It was kind of like a test case for, hey, can I make a spirit spot? What does this all entail? And it was cool that I think it was received so well. I got to incorporate a lot of the like very popular but low vis staff employees at the Naval Academy. And that was just a really cool project to do as my first. But I mean, I look at it now and not gonna lie, it's pretty cringe. I can't really watch it, but it's out there and I have to leave it. Yeah. So
well that's the reality of the world is, again, as a successful entrepreneur.
Also, that was 12 years ago.
And again, that's what it is. You got to execute and then iterate, execute, iterate again, and just keep making it better, which then leads to, again, you mentioned that, again, a music video is kind of the initial easier first step from an actual production side. What made you realize you wanted to, and like had the ability to then transition more almost to like skit comedy in some of your spirit spots? And what were some of the original ideas there?
It boiled down to Nate Brown graduated and left the academy. And so I no longer had my huge collaborator who was the music producer. Sure. So I have to make something. And I think I had just bought a microphone. Yep. And the first project I made was that September against Western Kentucky University. Yep. I'm from Kentucky, so it was like, I need to make something. Sure. It was okay. It was fun. I honestly can't remember what I remember just the shtick, which is like, you touch him and then he can't touch us, I think. Thank you. You know my spirit better than me. But what really set me off and what I consider as like the rocket launch, which was the Siri parody. Yep. For Air Force. That was the first project where we filmed it in under 2 hours. I edited it that night and released it the next day. So the entire process took less than like 4 or 5 hours. Oh. It was so quick. It was me and my friends. We were youngsters and I think confined to the academy on a Friday, so we couldn't leave. So I was like, let's make this. We started filming at 11 p.m. Yeah. Like went until like 12:30. I edited until like 2 a.m. or something, and then it was like up the next day. It just came so naturally and like quickly. Yeah. And I remember, I think Kenya Matalolo retweeted it or shared it, and then it picked up. And before I knew it, it was like in the hundreds of thousands, which was not new to me in terms of the viewership, but new to me because this was like purely creative, no prior production. It was just like, I have this idea, let's make it. Yeah. And so, like you're saying, a lot of these were just pure ideas, fun, like having fun as midshipman on a Friday night because you're stuck in Bancroft Hall and have nothing else to do. At what point, like when that started to gain popularity, at what point did you realize like, oh snap, like I may actually have something here? And at that point, do you go to the academy and ask for resources, whether that be people, time, space, access, money? Like how's that process
that like leads you then to producing something like Naptown Funk?
I think my first project that I approached the public affairs officer at the time, which was John Schofield, who's now at the Alumni Association. First project I think I approached him. I came onto the radar basically my youngster year or early junior year, I think. And I approached them because I had the idea for We Give a Ship.
Yep.
And so I had written the script, I'd sent it to them, and I was like, hey, I want to make this happen. But I wanted their prior approval because, there have been a number of projects that I have either not been able to release or released and then had to pull, or just you name it. So I went to them and was like, hey, what do you think of this script? I want to shoot it. Let's make it happen. And that's really, the Siri video straight into We Give a Ship. That's when I was like, okay, I'm tapping into something new here. It feels creative. It feels very like quick, fun. People are proud of it. And the catchphrase came along with it. So, when you go to the football games and everyone's like, they don't know your name, but they're like, I give a shit. Or what they always do is they say, we don't give up I don't give a shit. And I'm like, hey, 50% there. Great.
Close enough. I appreciate it.
Close enough. And I do the high five and let them go. No, it's truly is flattering. And I was just happy, I think, to create something that the Naval Academy and fans were proud of.
Yep.
Fun story. I thought the project was going to be like pretty big. I was like, this is a catchy phrase. Let's, So I made t-shirt designs, gave it to the mid store.
Yep.
And I was like, hey, I'm releasing this video. Do you think you guys could? And they're like, okay, we'll make some. So they made some t-shirts. I released the video. It was a hit. I come back and I'm like, let me see the shirts. And they're like, show them up. And I'm like, oh, cool. And I was like, okay, can I have one? And then they're like, yeah, you can go check out up front. And so they made me buy my own damn t-shirt. I shared that story. I shared that story with someone down in the MWR at the Academy, and she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And she like opens her drawers, pulls out a stack of yard cards and just hands it to me. She's like, I have no idea what money is on them, but please just take these, because here they are just like off of my back. They're making all of this money. Yeah. So anyway, also lesson learned, hey, and now I learn as I go along. Okay. Yeah. That was a long answer.
No, that we love it. We love it. And again, when you create something like We Give a Ship, right? And at this point, like you're saying, you've had small productions and you felt like it was going to be big. Did you have any idea it was going to be as big as it got and kind of lead to a little, for lack of a better term, like niche fame where people are literally seeing you at football games and being like, you're the We Give a Ship guy, right? Like, was that ever in your mind as a possibility?
No, not at all. I just knew that it was a catchy idea and I think people would like it. Sure. To what extent, you can never predict, right? Yeah. That's like, it's like calling the stock market or like, calling the lottery. You really can't. However, I had done a number of videos by that time to kind of understand, I think, what the direction of the Navy fandom was going, like what do they want? And, each video, as you mentioned previously, each video, I was social engineering the next concept. I was like, okay, this didn't work well. People liked this. They didn't like this. The video is too long or it's too short. I need to release it on a Tuesday night instead of a Sunday night. Like that was the type of like technical logistics and like administrative things I was thinking about going into each project. Sure. Was how to design it so that it could get its furthest reach. Because I think a misconception from a lot of viewers is that I had a budget, and no, all of these projects were made on no money. I had zero. And so my form of like stretching the non-existent dollar was figuring out how the hell can I make this go viral and how can I make the reach go further?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you did a phenomenal job. And again, it's one of these things when it comes to organic reach, right? It takes a lot of creativity, a lot of hard work and figuring it out and iterations, right? And it tries and tries and tries until you build it, which is incredible. And I have to ask about, how have you found that balance? Because obviously at that point, right, like We Give a Ship, like it's a little edgy, especially for like, again, a Naval Academy entity that, especially with a guy like Ted Carter, who we love dearly, like leading it, who's so polished, so professional, to kind of come on a play of words with like, again, a little bit of an edge like, how was navigating that balance, and how did you find the response from people on, again, a play of words that was edgy, yet again, in my opinion, completely appropriate and really like pride producing? But what's the thought going through your head in creating a video that walks that line?
You always have to ground the joke in the joke. It's like a lot of my videos have double entendres, and the humor is in the fact that the joke is designed almost like highbrow, like smartly, right? So that you can read it and say the joke and it still be grounded in, like, we give a ship, because we do. We, the Navy gives ships, and we take them and everything. Or like maybe Helm Yeah was a little bit of a stretch, but I mean, I think here, okay, this is what I'm about to say is not controversial at all. We are, like, our job in the military is to potentially go to war, right? So the stakes that we dealt with and what current active duty deal with is like heavy stakes, right? Mm-hmm. So for me to be able to make a joke about we give a shit or hell yeah, mm-hmm. I think plays into the audience. Like, we already operate in a mature adult world, and so all I'm doing is finding a way in, disguising it a little bit with some comedy, and honestly kind of playing on the fact that you would never be able to, say that in a public opinion from a public affairs officer or what, but you give a midshipman, a camera crew, and a couple friends, and disguise the joke in something else, and maybe you can do that. Like, so many times I've gone through my, like, Spirit Spot career, mm-hmm. and you run into public affairs officers that would be like, oh, we can't push that, we can't promote that, but you can, so I am all the public affairs officers' scapegoat. How's that?
Yeah, no, look, I get it. There have been plenty of times, again, especially with Academy Insider early on too, where they're like, we can't support it technically, but like good job. Keep this thing going, wink. Right? Yeah, big wink.
Yeah, big wink. Yeah.
And so you really, again, come onto the scene with We Give a Ship, an incredible, like, just film production, skit comedy. But then you kind of go back to a little bit of the music video side on Naptown Funk. Naptown Funk is massively popular. There are a ton of people who love it. What was the inspiration? You listen to Bruno Mars one day and you're like, we might be able to make this work, or kind of what's the process leading up to quite literally your most popular video?
The song came out, and I think almost immediately I connected Uptown, Naptown. It would be really, really fun to do. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure I attempted the project right after We Give a Ship. I'm pretty sure I attempted the project at that time. Mm-hmm. And I had the idea, but it was winter. I think it was going into winter in Annapolis, and then springtime, and it's just like so gray and ugly there, and like so depressing. And I knew I wanted to film it like in an iconic location. And so I sat on the idea for quite some time. Mm-hmm. I entered my senior year, and I think the discussion. So by senior year, I was the brigade public affairs officer, mm-hmm. the midshipman public affairs officer, of course. And I remember, like, the public affairs team was like, okay, Rylan, what are we doing? You give us your plan. And yeah. I was in 23 credits at the time. And I just remember just being like, I look back at like my productivity at that time. I was like, how the hell did I do that? But what happened was I had floated the idea about Naptown Funk, I believe in September, mm-hmm. late September. And John Schofield and Jenny Erickson, who were in the public affairs office, said, hey, we booked you a meeting with the city of Annapolis, and they want to talk about Naptown Funk, mm-hmm. or like about this new project that you have. Yep. And so I go into this meeting. I'm pretty sure it was like lunch, I had already done 4 periods, went to lunch, and then like the 30 minutes I like met up before I had to go back to physics or whatever. Yep. So I go into this board meeting, and they're like, well, what do you want to do? It's the city of Annapolis. And I was like, well, I want to make this project, but I want to close down a street to film there. Mm-hmm. And they go, which one? and I go, Main Street? And they're like, okay, great. When do you want to do it? And I was like a weekend in October. And they're like, okay. and what would be your second street if you didn't get it? And I was like, Maryland Ave.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, okay. So like I walk away. I'm like, what the hell? I haven't done anything.
Yeah.
And like the next day, they're like, hey, Main Street's already booked for that weekend for a marathon, but you have Maryland Ave and you're filming October 29th. And I'm like, that's in like 2.5 weeks. So I immediately go start writing the script, like listening to the song and like coming up with the lyrics.
Yep.
And then at the same time, I teamed up with Mark Clanton, who was helping me build the sound. And then I was like casting whatever that means for us mids, because it was just like asking a bunch of favors, casting a couple dancers, figuring out who was going to be the main lead. And basically in 1 week we finished Naptown Funk, like the song. The second week was all production, like gearing up to it. I had 4 hours. They allowed us to start filming at 7, and I had to be off the street at 11. So I had 4 hours. And the Naval Academy was like, not even the support where the city of Annapolis was like, yeah, you need to go pick up these barricades from the Annapolis like Department of Transportation or whatever.
Yep. And
so like I sent a mid to go pick them up and then come back, and like the Naval Academy was just like, how's the project coming along? Like, And so I remember showing up at 5 a.m. that morning, and the track we were using, we were just like holding a boom, or like a boom box, with the sound playing.
Yep.
And the track wasn't even finished. So it wasn't even finished. We had kind of designed it. I had like put these pieces together. It was wild, crazy time. Got the last shot at like 10:57.
Yeah.
Cleared the street. They were like pulling the barricades as cars were running through. And I was like, I can't believe we just did that. That day, I like then had to like go to the football game. And I remember sitting up, because I would take photos at the football game, and I could sit up in the press box, and I started editing it together. And I think by maybe Sunday, so like maybe like a couple days later, I was ready to show the project, and like, released it. 5 days later, it hit 1 million. I was on Fox and Friends. It was like all over. Cool story though. I went to Galway Bay, I think last year. It was my dad's and brother's reunion. And so I went with them, and I went to Galway Bay, and I don't know, Naptown Funk came up, and the waiter was like, oh yeah, I freaking hate that music video. And I think my mom was like, oh, why do you hate it? And she was like, well, because I live right up there. And I remember waking up at 5 a.m. to the damn soundtrack playing over and over and over again when they filmed it.
Listening to the same song for 4 straight hours.
And, I just looked at her, and I was like, I'm so sorry. And then I was at I got to go back and host the CD Ball in DC in March. And there was this lady who came up to me, and she goes, I was the one who helped you close down Maryland Ave from Annapolis. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. So cool. So anyway, it was one of those projects. I'm just so grateful that we got to do it. And so, it continues to be relevant, and I'm really, really happy for that.
Yeah. And do you have, again, it sounds like as you're telling these stories, a lot of these things just kind of happened, and they happened fast, and you had to execute. Do you enjoy making those projects, or at that point, is it like so stressful, or you're just so locked in? Like, what would you say has been your most enjoyable project, and how do you even quantify something like that in filmmaking? Is it a post facto enjoyment, or kind of like, how do you navigate that of like, this is your hobby and you love it, but it's a high stress like environment with like quick timelines? How do you navigate actually enjoying what you're making?
That's such a tough question. Here's the thing that I love the most. I love the act of sharing the final product. Okay. Like, there is no greater joy. I mean, there are, but there's no, like, the joy of me being able to share the project that we have been working on and have it realized, and have it be something that I'm proud of, and want other people to be proud of it and share it too, is like a feeling like no other. So the actual act of making it, the production component is incredibly intense. I leave after those days of production, I'm just like exhausted. And then you enter the whole other phase, which is editing it and putting it together and realizing in its full form. And so the experience itself is like, I love the collaborative nature of it and working with the team, but it is not like It is like any other job or a project. And granted, I know people listening to this or watching this may think, how is making a video or a movie or a TV show or whatever, like just a project. And it is just like any project, except the nature is in something a little bit perhaps more flashy, right?
Sure.
But it still comes down to decisions are getting made. You're having to execute quickly, keep your cool. And so probably sounds like I hate the filmmaking process. I absolutely love it, but ultimately it boils down to I think for me, when I have an idea that I think it would be so much fun to share, and sharing that and getting to do that is amazing.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I love it. And kind of bringing it to at least kind of one of, in my opinion, is one of the most iconic, where you really brought in, for lack of a better term, military star power, right? How do you navigate? Now you've been on the scene. Now you've made a ton of really popular videos, and people expect, like, people are like, oh, this is a Rylan production. Like, this thing better be off the charts. How do you approach going into making something like Star Wars at Navy? And like, do you feel an extra pressure at that point, or like, what's your mindset going into that now that you've established yourself as, again, a really high level, really talented producer and filmmaker?
There is a certain level, I think, of pressure.
Sure.
But it feels somewhat self-induced, because I think at the end of the day, I know I'm not going to release a project that I'm not proud of.
Sure.
So there's a lot of self-pressure there, just wanting to like execute. And obviously the ideas become larger, bigger, and you want to keep doing that. The thing with Star Wars at Navy was I was like, okay, I'm gearing up. This is what I want to do. I'm shooting it a couple weeks before Thanksgiving. And our first shot was with the C&O, because Ted Carter was like, hey, the C&O's coming to have dinner. You can have him for an hour. And I said, okay, we're going to go up to the top of the dive platform in Lejeune, and I'm going to have him throw someone off the top. And he's like, great. So that was the first shot we ever shot of Star Wars at Navy.
Mm-hmm.
And now, because I filmed that, I can't like shoot something with the C&O and then not make it happen.
Yeah.
So I was like, now we have to make it happen. And I think out of all the videos, Star Wars at Navy probably was the most stressful.
Sure.
Because it was like so many different shots, so many different things, so many things moving. My family probably hated the Thanksgiving time frame, because what I would do is I would always shoot the spirit spots before Thanksgiving and then go home and edit it.
Sure. And
so my parents would always be like, Rylan, we want to spend time
here with us,
like just editing, So by the time I leave Thanksgiving, they're like angry, and they're like, we never got to see you. And I was like, just, Mom, I love what I'm doing, kind of thing. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So that was just more self-induced stress. When you tackle those such big, especially that one, because there's like so many moving parts. But
no, absolutely. Well, you've done an absolutely phenomenal job. Again, I think what I love about Spirit Spots in general is that, when you take a look at Academy Insider and my mission of serving and supporting midshipmen, future midshipmen, and their families, there's like nothing cooler than during football season when someone produces a really good Spirit Spot on behalf of the Naval Academy, right? There is so much fun and pride in sharing those videos and owning that, right? Like it's an incredible service to the community, because like you're saying, the reality of our situation is that life at the Academy is really difficult. Life in the fleet is really difficult. There's a lot of seriousness that surrounds our profession, right? So to be able to have that moment of joy, right, where there's like a funny joke that plays on everything in, the rivalry between West Point and the Naval Academy, but that plays to the seriousness of our profession. We just have the ability to have fun, and you're able to channel that and bring that. Like, it's incredible, right? It's incredible. So I just want to say, like, thank you to you for everything you've done in sharing your talents with us, because it brings so much joy to the community, right? It brings so much joy to the community, and like, we love that. We love that. And so a genuine thank you to you for that. And I just want to now turn it over to you now and just be like, is there a next? Is there a next? And like, do you have another one in the works? Is your life now outside of the Navy as this a full-time profession? Are you just like moving on with it? Or do you ever have a vision or a goal or a kind of a plan to ever remake a new Spirit Spot?
I haven't made one since I got out. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it would be fun to perhaps do a final one.
Sure.
Not to make one for the sake of making one, but as I shared with you on We Give a Ship or on Naptown Funk, many of those ideas came years before, and it took me a while to execute it finally. I think there's something that I think would be great to finally bring it around. And potentially very soon, the viewers and the listeners could see something coming up. The tough part is now that I'm out, I no longer have the access, or there's just a lot more steps to make something happen.
Sure.
Also, I will say, I genuinely feel that me making videos in the Navy a decade ago compared to now is a much more difficult process now. Money, locations, budget, like you asking people to help, asking trained crew to help. It just creates, you have a lot more resources that you have to have in order to make this happen.
Sure.
And so all I'll share is that there's an idea that I've had for quite some time. I would never be able to do it when I was in. Well, now I'm out, and perhaps this might be the year to make this happen. So I'm busy behind the scenes, and I really, really hope that viewers and listeners will see something soon, and perhaps maybe even support it. So stay tuned.
Well, that's exciting. It's exciting to hear, and I love that, and I share that sentiment, right? Very similar thing with Academy Insiders. Some things that you just can't do while you are in, right? And now that we're out, now we have a little bit more wiggle room to make something awesome, right? Make something awesome with our respective platforms. So that's awesome. Thank you so much, and we'll be looking out for it. I'm excited for anything if this is real. So really appreciate it. We'll get ready to wrap up here. I just want to thank you for your time. The one thing that I do like to ask everyone who comes on, kind of regardless of topic, is I love talking about the Academy being really special because of the investment in people, in the development of midshipmen, personally, professionally, whatever the case is. And so whether it be in filmmaking, whether it be as a midshipman, do you mind sharing a story of someone who made a really positive impact in your life at the Naval Academy? Who is someone that's really special to you and made an impact during your time in Annapolis?
That's such a great question. And I pause because there are so many people who made my time at the Academy so much more special. I think I'd have to go with, since we're on the topic of spirits, but I mean, there's so many people from my capstone professor to Angela Moran, who ran the STEM program, to my sponsor parents, to friends, to you name it. I think I have to shout out Jenny Erickson, though. Jenny Erickson was a civilian. She was the public affairs civilian under the public affairs officer. And she was always, always, always in my corner, and sometimes told me the tough news that I needed to hear. She was the confidant. She was the first person I would talk to about new ideas, and she would say, that's stupid. Or the thing is I value her feedback so much. And it's very rare to have people in your life who are going to give you the feedback that you need, because that's so important. I think when I look back at all of the times that I grew the most were through failures, right? And so even making spirit spots, since we're talking about that today, like there were so many times I went through the process and she was like, it's not working here, or it's not clicking here. And the greatest thing is that because maybe she doesn't speak the lingo of filmmaking, she has this innate hunch about like, it's not working here, we're not working here, or you need to do, what if you were to do something here? And I know I'm speaking very, ambiguously, but her notes and her feedback were always pointed, smart, and everybody needs someone like that in your life. No matter what it is you're trying to do, you always need to have someone who can be critical and supportive. And so shout out to Jenny Erickson.
Love it. Well, Rylan, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with the entire Academy Insider audience. Again, Spirit Spots are an iconic piece of the Naval Academy experience in the recent history, and a big piece of that is because of you. So we're so excited to be able to share your time and have you come on and talk about Spirit Spots at the Academy. So really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and you're the man.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, to the Academy Insider audience, thank you so much for listening. If you ever have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the episode and have a great day. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Academy Insider podcast. I really hope you liked it, enjoyed it, and learned something during this time. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe or leave a comment about the episode. We really appreciate to hear your feedback about everything and continue to make Academy Insider an amazing service that guides, serves, and supports midshipmen, future midshipmen, and their families. Thank you.